The games industry, specifically publisher executives, insist that NFTs are the next big thing for gaming and how they'll revolutionize the way we play games, but have been unable to explain why or how. It's abundantly clear that this is just the next big buzzword, and rather than it being a technology that will positively impact our games, it's more just another vehicle, another avenue for monetization for executives to line their pockets. And chief among the companies who are pushing for NFTs is Ubisoft, who recently introduced Ubisoft Quartz. This was announced on December 7th, 2021, and on that same day they released a video about Ubisoft Quartz. And guess what? The community was not on board. This was so poorly received that it only got 1.6 thousand likes versus a whopping 41,000 dislikes, which is roughly a 96% dislikes ratio. And scrolling through the comments, I mean, they kind of speak for themselves. People see the business scheme that executives are trying to promote under the guise of a better tomorrow for gaming, when this stuff, much like microtransactions and loot boxes, stand to compromise game design, game integrity, and just make our games worse for the sake of corporate monetization. Stephen Totilo delved deeper into Ubisoft's implementation of NFTs. You got a couple items here for Ghost Recon Breakpoint. Now, here is one that's egregious. Among them is this helmet right here, and Stephen Totilo noticed that, not sure what the 600-hour global playtime thing is on the helmet. Surely that's not just redeemable by people who've played the game for 600 hours. That's exactly what it turned out to be. Ubisoft's second Ghost Recon NFT can now be claimed by people who have played the game on PC for 600 plus hours. Presumably, the 600 plus will jack up the price at which people who claim them will be willing to sell. Ubisoft's FAQ says it gets a percentage of cut of sale value in some cases. Go figure. But on top of using FOMO to get people to get these NFTs now before they run out, all these riches you may potentially be able to partake in if you sell these NFTs. Aside from all that, they're also fueling engagement, as they like to call it, by forcing people to play 600 plus hours of the game first. This is their way of getting people who are falling for their NFT trap to continuously play the game extensively in the hopes that they'll also be lured into the microtransaction store and monetize them through that on top of the NFTs. Now, it isn't just the gaming community that isn't on board for executives' push for NFTs and trying to sell them as the next big thing through buzzwords. Developers are also not at all happy by the company's sudden announcement. Many of the developers didn't seem to have gotten a heads up, and developers, aside from being upset at all of the negative attention that this is bringing to their games, they don't even know what benefits the NFTs are meant to offer. And when the ground floor developers, the people actually getting their hands dirty, actually making the games, don't even know how NFT will prove beneficial to video games, then you really know that this whole thing is just a freaking fad. So scrolling down, we'll find some information about messages shared on Ubisoft's internal social media hub, Mana, which quickly filled with questions and concerns from developers across the company. Some didn't understand which old problems the new tech actually solved. So far, none. Honestly, everything executives have been advertising NFTs will pave the road for have already been possible without that technology. While others were worried about receiving mandates to start integrating NFTs, non-fungible tokens, aka hyperlinks to JPEGs, into their own games. And once you start forcing a developer to implement stuff and build their games around that, the original design and the maximization of fun is going to be degraded. It is going to be compromised, just as microtransactions and loot boxes have done. Here are some direct quotes from employees. I don't really understand the problem being solved here. Is it really worth the extremely negative publicity this will cause? Narrator: No, it's not. Another asked, how can you look at private property speculation, artificial scarcity, and egoism, then say, yes, this is good, I want that, let's put it in art? Because executives don't give a crap about art. They don't care about the artistic merits of gaming. They care about its monetization potential, its ability to nickel and dime players through its interactive nature, rather than using the interactive nature to push the boundaries of immersion and fun. Here's a third message that reads, I normally try to stay positive on our announcements, but this one is upsetting. Suffice to say that Ubisoft is facing something of an internal protest from developers who don't believe this to be the best direction for Ubisoft games. Some developers raised environmental concerns. There's still a lot of debate over the strengths and weaknesses over this alternative form of crypto generation. Others simply felt like the announcement was just a vehicle for meaningless buzzwords and another unnecessary PR disaster for a company whose reputation is already in shambles due to the harassment allegations within Ubisoft, the reports of a toxic and abusive workplace, so on and so forth. But yeah, I mean, even developers are catching on to the fact that NFTs so far have proven to be nothing more than buzzwords thrown out there. And when the developers themselves can sense this, the people who are there knowing how to make the sausage, if you will, when they're feeling similar sentiments as the rest of the community, then you know that these worries and skepticism surrounding NFTs are certainly very valid. It is a scheme that wants to lure players through the promise of play to earn. Basically, invest your time and money in our game, and who knows, maybe there's a chance that you'll make it big by selling NFTs. It's very much an investment opportunity, a gamble. That's what investment is at the end of the day. It's the gamble that you will pay less than what you'll sell something for. And this is the direction that games are headed in. As if loot boxes weren't enough of gambling in our games as they were, now we've got speculative investment in valueless in-game assets that are paving the road to video games becoming a second job where you are going to need some kind of economics or business major rather than a place to escape, a world that you can just immerse yourself in and experience cool stories and great art. The internal turmoil and pessimism got bad enough that Ubisoft's own CEO Yves Guillemot had to step in a Q&A meeting and address concerns. And what do you know? He insisted that NFTs are just the beginning. I mean, this is all already awful in its current stage. I don't even want to think about what he means by just the beginning and ways that NFTs will evolve for the worst, to make gaming worse. But yeah, it is detailed by Kotaku here that in a video Q&A this week, Yves Guillemot tried to assure developers, but answers were vague and leaned on buzzwords like metaverse and Web 3.0, leaving some as disheartened by the company's latest PR disaster. As before, developers of Ghost Recon Breakpoint were particularly upset and worried given that this was the game that was chosen as the guinea pig for the implementation of Ubisoft Quartz NFTs. This is a game that they spent years rehabilitating after a disastrous 2019 launch, and now its reputation is being dragged back through the mud just so the company can stake its claim on the latest speculative tech fad. And speculative really is the key word here. Price ranges when it comes to how much these NFTs are being sold for range vastly. Players have already started at least trying to resell the tokens on third-party platforms for amounts that wishfully range from hundreds of dollars to hundreds of thousands of dollars. So these are gambles that you're very much hoping pay off, and this is just a dark road to lead video games down in. Now we're getting to a point where video games are starting to have more of a real-life financial ramifications than they already did. Now with the introduction of NFTs and this next big push to monetize games even further than they already are. But yeah, indeed, the announcement of Quartz and Breakpoint being the first game that it's implemented in has had an unprecedented negative swing in player sentiment about the live service open world shooter. So developers have had no choice then to implement NFTs as part of this new mandate and push by Ubisoft. And despite this being an executive decision, the developers who have put so much work into trying to revitalize this game, they're the ones who are being negatively affected. They're facing the brunt of the backlash. But yeah, with developers being so upset, Guillemot parachuted into a Q&A with developers. He got right on it, a move that he didn't do for the allegations of harassment, misconduct, abuse, and discrimination taking place within the studio. When all of that was going down, Guillemot didn't go and get ahead of the story and address things to the developers and the employees, assure them of, a better future or whatever. No, because that was stuff that was only affecting human beings. They don't matter. They're just tools to be exploited. But if internal turmoil is affecting moneymakers like NFTs and Ubisoft's Quartz BS initiative, then Yves Guillemot has to trigger red alert and personally address the developers when money is at stake, when executives' initiatives and corporate business strategies are at stake. That's when Ubisoft CEO Yves Guillemot will show some semblance of giving a damn. If this isn't indicative of where Yves Guillemot's priorities lie and just what a scumbag of a human being he is, I don't know what will. Ubisoft co-founder said the backlash to the Quartz announcement was expected and likened it to initial public outcry over previous new developments in the games industry like DLC, microtransactions, and loot boxes. The implication seemed to be that NFTs would become similarly accepted over time. Let's get one thing straight. Loot boxes, microtransactions, DLC, season pass, battle pass, all the frickin' monetization schemes under the sun are not accepted. They are tolerated up to a certain point with lines in place that can be crossed, and when they are crossed, there will be backlash. But generally, people aren't accepting of how gaming has been degraded by the implementation of microtransactions and loot boxes, how they've negatively affected game design, the stuff that we unlock, and just the natural progression of fun that we used to get in video games that are now compromised because they want to incentivize players to skip the grind or skip the obstructions that have purposely been implemented, the issues that have been purposely implemented by buying the solutions. That is not acceptance. But yeah, just the fact that Yves Guillemot is comparing NFTs to microtransactions, loot boxes, DLC, and other forms of monetization, and the feedback surrounding that goes to show just how much NFTs is more about monetization. He pretends like, oh, well, at least people now see that loot boxes, microtransactions, DLC, and whatnot have been good for the industry. It's like, that's not what people are seeing. NFTs, people are foreseeing as yet another layer to monetization that will have to learn to deal with, that will have to learn to tolerate, and people don't want that future, which is why this stuff is being called out now. Employees were also concerned by this comparison, since even Ubisoft's own microtransactions like XP boosters still regularly draw scrutiny from players. Exactly. There's also a comment down here that puts it aptly, don't worry, it's just like all the other terrible things we have done to make modern video games suck, is an interesting gambit. Indeed. Kotaku then delves once more into executives being unable to properly justify NFTs and the way they'll enhance gameplay in any way, shape, or form. When Guillemot was pressed for details about what new types of gameplay NFTs and blockchain technology would make possible, sources told Kotaku the CEO didn't really provide any. He spoke more broadly about how concepts like the metaverse would allow players to build and sell virtual houses and have agency in the game creation process itself. The emphasis being on buying and selling and about economic elements that they hope to implement in these games, but nothing on actually enhancing the gameplay experience, the immersion factor, and making games better and more fun to play, because that's actually not why executives are pushing these NFTs for. They haven't given that a second thought because they don't care. And so now they're scrambling for reasons as they're asked about this stuff, but their lack of response, the fact that they don't seem to know themselves, goes to highlight that their priority with this isn't in fact to make games better, it's just to line their pockets better. And then we return to developers' worries on how the integration of this technology will impact game development. Adding yet another type of microtransactions economy that needs to be managed could siphon away even more resources, and this could all serve to deviate game design and the most potential fun that a game concept can accomplish. As companies push the boundaries of what they think they can get away with NFTs, they'll mandate that games revolve more and more around pushing players towards these NFTs, and that'll compromise the original vision of a game to be tailored more towards that monetization scheme, as has happened again with all the various forms of microtransactions, loot boxes, battle passes. One developer raised fears with the following quote, "I'm here to make games and promote fun and entertainment, and I don't see how this is going in that direction. It's just another way to milk money." Even the developers, who again actually get their hands on these games and make them directly, are calling this stuff out and can see the writing on the wall, how this is very much a way to milk money, another monetization machine to shove in a game. The article then concludes by once again emphasizing Guillemot has said, Ghost Recon's NFTs are just the beginning, which means that NFTs are planned to be implemented across more Ubisoft titles, and it is stated here that Ubisoft has many more plans and much broader ones for pushing blockchain technology into its other games in the future. And this is why, even though we recently got an official announcement that a new Splinter Cell game is in development, I'm not going to get my hopes up that it'll be the Splinter Cell experience that we desire from days past, because Ubisoft is pushing forward into a road and direction that is woefully misguided. Maybe it'll be good for business and all that jazz, but when it comes to just making games with integrity, they're deviating even more than they've already had, walking down a dark road that I don't want to be any part of. So I'm going to approach all of their future projects with a healthy amount of skepticism. And aside from facing backlash from the community and the developers, Ubisoft is also facing scrutiny from the French trade union Solidaire Informatique. The headline of the PC Gamer article that reported on this reads, Ubisoft's NFT scheme criticizes useless, costly, ecologically mortifying by French trade union. And scrolling down here, we have some quotes expressing their sentiments. Ubisoft has recently entered the blockchain and non-fungible tokens market, a decision that has been widely criticized by our players, bringing no improvements or benefits to our games. Many of us in the company feel the same way and say the blockchain is harmful, worthless, and without a future. In the internal Ubisoft forum, a mere 5% of comments were positive in the reception of this NFT announcement. 95% of responses were negative, and this is something that was relayed by Solidaire's Informatique chapter rep Mark Rutschla, who is also a Ubisoft employee, more specifically a senior designer on Ghost Recon Breakpoint. And aside from highlighting the discontent from the community, he flat out said developers are not happy about this news. Before concluding by relaying this morning, Guillemot has reaffirmed that Ubisoft will still develop blockchain NFT. There are more things to come. He mentioned his continuous will and enthusiasm for Web3, metaverse, and self-regulated virtual world. So this is that meeting that Yves Guillemot had with various members of Ubisoft's development team and its employees to try to assure them that this is the future and the future is bright and that we're going to make gaming better without being able to provide any reasons as to why. Just throwing the buzzwords that they throw to investors to try to get them hyped over the potential money that could be made. And from there, this developer also called out how Yves Guillemot was far less responsive to the harassment scandal. He didn't get ahead of that, but with this, he's getting in front of developers and trying to protect his money-making scheme, but he didn't go that far to protect the actual human beings he's responsible for. Just to compare, during the whole harassment scandal, he didn't make such a move. It's crazy. Hopefully this will further instigate protests and revolt within a company that's in desperate need of a leadership overhaul. Yves Guillemot cannot be allowed to remain the leader of a company he's failed for many, many, many years. I'll close off with one more quote from the statement issued by the trade union. This is reported by Eurogamer. It reads, "You like dividends, subprimes, financial derivatives, crises, speculation, fast trading, money laundering, etc. This is the assured and unspoken promise of NFT. We are far from the enjoyment of video games." Basically, you like things that executives tend to enjoy as part of their schemes to further line their pockets, then I guess NFTs are for you. But for those who just want to play and enjoy games, trust me when I tell you, NFTs are not meant for that. They weren't implemented for that reason. And while maybe there is a way to implement NFTs in a way that does positively impact games, that's not the kind of R&D that these publishers and their executives are doing. The R&D revolves around extracting and milking money more so than they already are now. If you weren't already convinced that NFTs stand to prove incredibly detrimental for the future of video games, then listen to the developers themselves. Even they are expressing exactly the same concerns that the community at large are. And beyond that, they have additional concerns to deal with, like having more of their game development process compromise by mandates that will force them to make their game a certain way, a way that they know is less fun, but have no choice but to do so to fulfill the monetization-driven NFT mandates on top of the monetization-driven microtransactions and loot box mandates. NFTs are just bad news for the future of gaming, And the best we can hope for is that we can stop this trend on its tracks before it has a chance to kick off. And we do that by being vocal, by making NFTs a PR liability, ensuring that anytime a company tries to shove in NFTs in an egregious way, that we call that out and create a wave of backlash that will show other companies, oh dang, it's actually kind of risky to implement NFTs because of all of the negative PR we'll get from it. And in that way discouraging them from normalizing this. But obviously only time will tell. In the meantime, let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on the latest developments surrounding Ubisoft's NFTs and developers' own concerns against the notion of mandating them in Ubisoft games. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.